So Warren Buffett has pledged to give away 99% of his wealth before he dies or when he dies. And then Bill and Melinda Gates took on the same pledge and now are encouraging others to do the same, especially the ultra wealthy when they die. And on the surface, it may seem like this is an incredibly great and good thing to do, but I wanted to make this video to really talk about financial legacy and why I think that may not always be the best case scenario, and why I think as a Christian who wants to really leave a legacy and a heritage for generations, why I think about this a little bit differently. So let's get into this. Hey, my name is Ellis Hammond. I'm a full-time multifamily real estate investor. I was a college pastor for several years and now a full-time entrepreneur. And I make these videos to encourage, inspire other kingdom-minded real estate investors who are really thinking about building generational wealth for their family and for others, and really trying to be a good steward. And, you know, I was listening to a sermon the other day by John Tyson, and it spurred he's a great pastor out of New York, and it spurred some thoughts on what I think about financial legacy. And what's interesting about giving away 99% of your funds like Warren Buffett is doing or Bill Gates is doing, you know, I find that really fascinating because on some ways it seems incredibly generous. I mean, these guys have built, you know, billions and billions of dollars of money. And so it's like, wow, they're going to have a massive impact when they die or give away their money, and that's true, and I think that's incredible, and you'll hear later why I think generosity is so key and so important. But you know, it's also good to remember, like, what about their kids? You know, and I think what's interesting, and maybe some of the thought process around that is like, well, I don't want to give all of this money to these kids or to my next generations because we've heard the saying, right? Like the first generation makes it, the second generation keeps it, and the third generation loses it, or something like that, right? And so there's this thought of like, well, I built all of this, and if I just give it to my family, they're going to lose it. And I think as Christians, as intentional parents, as folks who are called to really steward not just our money, but really steward our family, that we should be thinking a lot more long term for our kids. And what I mean is that if Warren gives away 99% of his money, he's just giving that to someone else's kids. If we give away all of our wealth, what we're really saying is that this person's kid is going to be a better steward of this money than my kid. And I think that's something really, I just think that is a lack of responsibility as parents, especially parents that want to leave a legacy, that I hope that me and my wife can teach and train over the 18 to 20 years that we have with our daughter and hopefully future kids of the legacy that we want to build. And I think we have an advantage. Like my daughter Ruth will get to be under my roof for 18 years. I would hope that over the next 18 years, I can build in her a foundation around what we want to be like with money. And we say two things in our household around money. We say that we want to be, that the Hammonds are creators of wealth. My grandpa was an entrepreneur. My dad was an entrepreneur. I'm an entrepreneur. I want Ruthie to be an entrepreneur, right? Why? Because the way we think about money is different. We are creators of wealth. We know how to create and build wealth. The second thing we say about money is that we want to be abundantly generous, because once we know how to create it, then we have much more to give, and we should never hold on to that. And so my point is that, like, there's just this, I think, a wrong mentality of, oh, it's better to just give it all away because it's all going to go down the drain anyways, to think like that shouldn't be the case. If you have 18 to 20 years to spend with your children and you don't teach them the responsibility of how to steward that money, that legacy that you're building, that's on you, right? And so I wanted to make this video because I think it'll be really fun for me to look back on, honestly, in 18 years and really ask myself the question, did I do that? Like with the wealth that we built, is my daughter or are my kids really ready to take that on? And is it so implanted, is it so in her that she would one day be able to pass it on to her kids and over and over? And I think this just takes intentionality. I think it's one of the things that me and my wife are really convicted and challenged by right now. Is, have we really thought out, right? So even those two things I said, we're creators of wealth, we're givers of wealth. Is that written down? And are we able to really present that and show that to my daughter over her years. And so I even think about like cool ideas of telling the stories of our family, telling the stories of my granddad, telling the stories of my dad and my mom who started their own business and what it was like to grow up in that. And then really showing her, hey, my own journey, I was a pastor, I was scared of money, but then I became an entrepreneur and here's what I learned about money. Those are the things that we need to continue to do with our kids, is tell them stories and bring them in to our stories and be really intentional about the legacy that we're trying to build. And so if we don't, then that's where the stipulate, or the whatever you call it, the stigma of the first generation makes it, the second generation keeps it, the third generation loses it. It's because the first generation never taught the second generation the foundations of how they built that wealth, why they built that wealth, and what they want to do with that wealth. Right? It wasn't passed down. And so this really video is just a video about intentionality, especially in parenthood. And I just feel like I'm in a season of being convicted and challenged to really think intentionally for my daughter as she grows up, and what we're teaching her about money and what we're teaching her about our legacy. And so I hope this is helpful. I really meant this to be an encouragement. I think there's a couple steps that you can follow, is to really think about, what do you want your financial legacy to be, right? That's okay. Number one, give yourself permission to think and dream wildly about building an amazing financial legacy for your kids. The scriptures actually say and talk about the righteous man leaves an inheritance for his family, right? Like, that's biblical. It's okay. It's in the Bible. But it's so much more than just giving them money. It's what comes along with that inheritance. It comes down to the rootedness of why that's important, and what we as the Hammond family want to be able to give and steward for generations, not just to accumulate wealth, but be able to give and impact. I mean, I think about the Rockefeller family. You know, Rockefeller was one of the most wealthiest ever probably in the world during his time. And you look at what the Rockefeller family has done. Like, they do some incredible things for the planet, for the world, for society today, because they've built this foundation. And so not all, wealthy, rich families are bad. And so be intentional. Think about, dream wildly, but then also write it down. Think creatively about how you want to communicate that. Make it simple so that it's memorable, right? That's why I love that we're creators of wealth, we're givers of wealth, and we're going to kind of work on that. But you get my point. And then tell stories. Tie back to those stories. There are a lot of things about my grandpa and a lot of things about my dad that maybe are not things that I want to pass down. But the way they connect to the financial legacy that I want to build is right on. They were entrepreneurs. They were creators. They took risk. They built something. That was instilled in me, and I want to instill that same thing into my children as well. So those three things. Let me know what you think about this. I think this is a little bit different video for me, but I'd like to keep talking about this if you enjoy this. Think wealthy. Make sure you follow. Appreciate you guys. Cheers.